Hello and welcome back to Lorcana Villain. My name is Baker, and today we're going to be reviewing and discussing the sealed format that will be taking place for the first 3 rounds at the World Championship. I don't know how popular this video is going to be. Obviously only 28 people are going to actually be playing this format, but in my head, if even just one of those 28 players gets something out of this video, they're that bit more aware of a certain card that might be in the pool, then it's worth it. And people that are planning on watching Worlds might appreciate having an overview of what the sealed meta looks like. So I've decided to push ahead and do this. I'm sorry it's been so long since my last piece of content. It's been a wild week. It's currently Monday. I leave tomorrow night and I need to get this video recorded and edited and done in 6 hours. After that, I'm doing a group podcast with members of the Lorcana community that I'm sure many of you will be familiar with. And then I've got to edit that, get that ready. And then tomorrow I've got to spend the day. I've got to do shopping for my mum. I've got to get my hair cut. There's a million things to do before I get the train in the evening to the airport. Not gonna lie, guys, I'm feeling a lot of nerves as it gets closer and closer and closer. And hey, I've always considered that a good thing in general. Nerves show you care, in my opinion, but oh boy. But I couldn't be more excited. But yeah, we're going to be talking about the sealed format. So for the first 3 rounds of the World Championship, players will be given 4 packs of Shimmering Skies, 4 packs of Azurite Sea, 4 packs of Arcasia's Island, and 4 packs of Reign of Jafar, which they will open, and then they'll have, I think it's 60 minutes, something around that, to build a 50 card deck using no more than 3 different ink types. So I went on Dreamborn, I filtered to the 4 sets that are going to be available for this event. You can see up here we're going to be looking at Evasive, Songs, Actions, cards that banish, items, cards that do damage, cards that draw, and then I've got a bunch more here just looking at the 1-drops, the 2-drops, etc. This is likely going to be a pretty long form video. I'm going to try to not go over an hour, but get through as much of it as I possibly can. That being said, some of you may have noticed that my floor is looking far less messy. I've nearly finished sorting out my cards, so that's a good thing. And Hades is in a drawer at the moment. Aren't you, darling? You chilling, aren't you? Anyway, a shout out to the channel sponsor, Cardmarket. If you're looking for Lorcana singles at competitive rates, then check out Cardmarket. But let's take a look at the sealed format for the World Championship. Alright, so we're going to start off by taking a look at the evasive characters that are in the card pool. Now, I will make a note of saying every single slide that we look at today, it is not necessarily every single card in the pool that has the word evasive or is a song, is an action. I have tried to pick one that I think are the most relevant. That being said, I understand that with only getting 16 packs and having to pick between 3 colours, anyone could end up having to play anything that's just a bit meh. We're not really going to have the liberty of picking all the top tier cards. We've got to work with what we've got. And if we really want to play a particular ink type, because, for an example, Ruby and Amethyst both have the most evasive characters, right? So if you want a heavy evasive package and you want to pick one of those colours, and then when you've picked the rest of your deck, you may end up having to play something from Amethyst or whatever, which is a bit subpar. So I've tried to be generous with what I have included. It is the majority of cards that include the particular keyword or whatever it is we're looking at, like a song or cards that banish, etc. But yeah, if you have any experience playing sealed format for Lorcana for any set, you'll know that most of the time it ends up being a very heavy evasive wins format. If people don't pull evasive cards, and then even if you do get them, you may only get so many, and if you don't find them and your opponent has like a really nice evasive character that's cheap and sits there questing for 2 and over and over again, that's just going to win them the game 9 times out of 10 on the spot. So having evasive characters or answers to evasive is so important in a sealed format, especially because a very quick look at the cards that include the effect of banishing a character, which we'll look at in more detail later. Not a lot on offer, not a lot going on at all, so you really need to make sure that you can deal with evasives. Yes, there are some cards that deal damage and we'll get to them, but nonetheless you want to have a strong evasive package yourself. Like I said, the Ruby has most of the evasives, then Amethyst, then Steel, then Emerald. So already that's something to bear in mind. If you want a strong evasive package, you are probably running either Ruby or Amethyst, maybe Steel as well. And again, when your opponents, like when you're playing your game, as your opponent reveals their inks, you know, know, hopefully you'll have a bit, if you're a World Championship player watching this video, you'll have a better idea about what sort of threat are more likely to be in their list overall based on those colors. So yeah, a quick look through. I'm not going to read every single one of these cards. It's just kind of making us... I'm going to read a fair few of them though, because again, I want World Championship players to be able to kind of just listen to this and like have this as a way of just, you know, maybe for the plane ride over or whatever, just as something that they can listen to and be reminded of the cards that are available and serve specific purposes. So we will talk through some of them. Happy here is a fantastic one drop being able to hit for 2. And again, with sealed format, because you don't necessarily get a lot of like banish effects, like you don't normally get a lot of synergy overall. You try and make synergy the best you can with your card pool, but it ends up just being a matter of big bodies, evasives, making favorable challenges, trying to trade up, and really it's just a game of board control. It doesn't have the liberty of some of these meta decks to be able to later on in the game play a big Sisu or a B-Prep, or be able to chain together a combination of characters including foxes or whatever where you can get back the board. Once you lose the board in sealed, it's super hard to come back. But let's talk through some of the better evasive characters on this list. Obviously, the 2-drop Diablo, Spiteful Raven being able to hit 3 is super good. This Go-Go Tamago, not only being evasive, but being a potential finisher is really, really good. The Vanellope Von Schweetz, the 3/1, 2-cost, basically a Pegasus. This is a fantastic option, being able to take out any evasive character that has 3 willpower. This Mr. Smee, the 2-cost Steadfast Mate, gets evasive during your turn. He's a 3/2, so this is what we think of. This is an evasive answer. Some of these characters you want to be sitting there questing, right? Anything that's questing that quest for 2, absolutely. But then you also want to make sure that you're including cards that are good at answering evasive. So this Mr. Smee is an answer. Helga Sinclair, the 2-cost, she is uninkable, and you have to be careful with how many uninkables you're putting into your deck, in any deck, but in sealed especially. But she's so good. The 0/4 stat line, Challenger 3, and evasive during your turn is too good to pass up in my opinion. Basil is a 3/2 with evasive, 3 cost. We've also got this Tinkerbell, who's a 1/3 quest for 2 from set 6. If your opponent's on the play and they put this down on turn 3, you absolutely want to be able to answer this and hit 3 with an evasive. So that's where things like Basil or Mr. Smee or Helga or Vanellope really come in handy, because you don't want this Tinkerbell just sitting there. The new Genie, Satisfied Dragon, who's a Satisfied Dad, I nearly said. Satisfied Dragon, 3-cost Inkable, 3/4 quest for 1 and evasive during your turn. Again, a great answer, and with that 4 willpower is hopefully surviving the majority of challenges into any evasive that might be a 3/3. Gotta point out this Pascal, the Amber Amethyst, 4-cost uninkable, 3/3 quest for 3 and evasive. This is such a strong card, but it's worth noting if you are playing Amethyst. So Amber, like the best thing about Amber is it has some song synergy. Not that there's amazing songs in sealed. We'll get there. There's a couple. So Amber not providing a lot of evasive support, but obviously a lot of it being in Amethyst. And if one of your other colours is Amber, this is absolutely a top tier card, this Pascal. This is a must answer. Again, a reason to want to include characters that can be evasive even if it's only during your turn and hit for 3. Grumpy's another great example of that. 3-cost, 3/1, gets evasive during your turn. Even this Zipper, who's a 2/4 and gets evasive during your turn. Sure, we're not hitting that 3 that we want to hit for some of these characters, but 2 is super relevant for others. 3 really is the magic number, but this could still be a fantastic option. Bruni is a great card, questing for 2, 2/2 evasive, and you draw a card. We'll get to the screen to look at cards that draw cards, but yeah, when you're filling 2 major purposes like this that are so strong, it's evasive, it's going to quest for a lot, it's going to draw me cards. Bruni would be an absolute include. And like, there are some cards that if you pull it, you probably build your deck around it. You absolutely go, okay, if I've pulled this, I am playing this colour, no doubt, and I need to include enough other cards of this colour that are good enough. A fantastic example of that is one of the all-stars in this format, which is of course the Genie, which I don't need to sell you on. If you pull this, this is huge. So suddenly people need to be able to hit 4 with evasives, or they're two-shotting you, or they're challenging with an evasive and then doing some damage with another card. Whatever it is, they're investing a lot to get rid of this Genie, and it's drawing you a card. Iago is another all-star. Again, if there are some interesting actions in format, they're mainly in specific colours. But if your opponent doesn't pull the actions, doesn't run them, then this Iago is going to run absolutely rampant. Pinocchio is pretty interesting. Again, he's only a 0/4, but he's evasive. The 4 willpower is going to be hard to hit. Questing for 2 and drawing you a card every time he quests, I would absolutely be playing this. Ryder's another 3/4 with evasive. This Fidget is, like, amazing. Ruby Emerald, 4-cost inkable, 2/3 quest for 2, evasive, and when he quests, another one of your characters gets evasive. Again, this is an example of a card that if you pull it, you're like, oh, do I have enough do I have enough good Ruby and Emerald cards? So Fidget's fantastic. I want to be conscious of time, so speeding on a little bit. The Moana that also gives +3 strength to a character when she challenges. Another great evasive. Vanellope has Rush. Elsa, obviously another top tier pick with Rush, evasive, and being able to exert a character. Magicka Dispel has evasive and provides potential card draw. This Rapunzel, like with no brawl, like this is terrifying. Shutting you down from questing, a 2/5 that quests for 2, that's evasive. Yeah, she's a 5 cost, but she's inkable, an absolute all-star. Maui Half Shark, obviously another absolute all-star. Again, it's a bit later, it is a 6 cost, so it like, hey, in sealed by turns, that could be too late. By that point in the game, if your opponent's just been able to quest with a bunch, they've hit their evasive, you haven't, then it could be too late, but Shark is still no doubt a top tier pick. Even things like Wendy Darling, just because she's a 5/7 quest for 2, yes, she's a 7 cost, and you don't want to be playing a lot of high cost characters in your sealed deck, but I still think it's important to have a couple, and she's great questing for 2. Ratigan, uninkable, so unlikely that you're going to play this, but hey, if you don't pull much evasive, you may be forced to. Tinkerbell, Hero Hamada, hey, if you can shift this hero and give him ward and evasive as well, that's pretty cool. The Mulan, who has the secondary ability where you can be your other characters can challenge ready characters, and then we have a couple of actions, Twitter Patted, I don't know if I'm saying that right, Pouncing Practice, and Duck for Cover. If you don't get many evasive characters or ways to deal with evasive, you may be forced to play these, or you may pull cards that have synergy with actions, so these could absolutely come up. And then some items, Longboat, where you pay 2 and give evasive to a character until the start of your next turn, it's a 2 cost uninkable. Emerald Coil is a 3 cost uninkable, and whenever you ink, one of your characters gets evasive until the start of your next turn. Or 4 cost uninkable, Pixie Dust, you exert and pay 2, chosen character gets Challenger 2 and evasive. Again, you may be forced to play these cards if you don't have many ways of dealing with evasive. They are uninkable, but they absolutely are something that could come up. So yeah, this is the vast majority of the evasive pool. As you can tell, hitting 3 is so significant for characters like Tinkerbell and Pascal, but 4 is very relevant as well. Genies, Pinocchios. But yeah, the links to all these sheets will be down in the description, so like if you're a Worlds player and you just want to flick through and just like remind yourself of like the relevant characters in a specific colour and like the stats and stuff like that, hopefully this little recap is helpful for that. Let's move on now to songs, and I've included characters that have synergy with songs. Not a lot. We've got Pepper, where you can gain a lore when one of your characters sings a song. Alan Adale lets you gain a lore whenever you play a song, but he also quests for 2, so this is a character you might put in just for stats. Prince Naveen is obviously one of the better ones, but with the Singer 6, 3/3 quest for 2 and getting to instantly play a song. Isabella, if you play a song, one of your character has to sing a song, one of your other characters. No, whenever one of your characters, so it can be her, but then she can't be challenged at the start of the next turn. Mirabelle, who whenever she quests, you can return a song of 3 cost or less from your discard, and Kristoff, who you can pay 1 less ink to play him for every song in your discard. So a few cards that have some interesting synergies with songs, but what is the song pool like? This is the vast majority of it. The All-Star is Into the Unknown, 100%, just a fantastic way to, I'm not sure if I put this on the list of banish effects, because obviously this isn't banishing, but it is of course removal on a super cheap card. Again, if you pull this, you probably lock in, okay, I want to play Sapphire Amethyst. You're Welcome is also another very diverse one, great for just removal if you need it to be, or like self-card draw, so I think this is a pretty good song in this format. Heffalumps and Woozles is nice card draw and slowing them down. When Will My Life Begin, similar. All Is Found, an okay ramp tool. Beyond the Horizon is obviously pretty good. It is an uninkable and it's expensive, but it is synced together. And yeah, if you pull this, you probably are tempted to run it. It's card draw, right? Down in New Orleans, meh. I'm not a huge fan of this card. Stopped Chaos in its tracks is fairly interesting. Like the 3 strength is pretty good, so there's a chance you see this, and it means no worries. I doubt it because it's uninkable mostly. And I'm Still Here, I think, is a super solid card. Again, it's card draw, resist 2 is pretty good. So we don't have tons of great songs. I think your highest rolls are Into the Unknown and You're Welcome. And then things like Heffalumps and Woozles, I'm Still Here, When Will My Life Begin. You may also want, again, there are illusions in this format, so it might be useful to have actions, things like Ever As Before, but maybe it's too niche. But again, if you lock into your colours, maybe this Ever As Before is one of the better Sapphire cards that you have left that you kind of just have to include, and it's inkable, and then maybe that comes up if your opponent does have these illusion characters. Like I said, keep saying, you never know what you're going to see because it's going to be completely based on what people pull. Overall, underwhelming songs, but be aware of Into the Unknown and You're Welcome in particular. Let's move on to actions, and there's actually quite a lot of interesting ones, starting off with characters that have synergy with actions. Obviously the Maui Shark, I hope that you're going to run this even if you don't run the actions probably. And then Lilo, you'd run this Lilo anyway because it's got the ready effect on a 4/4 quest for 2 inkable card, but if you pull this Lilo, maybe that's an excuse to try and fit in some more actions. Robin Hood, I don't know, I don't think you're ever pulling enough actions, and like if you only pull Robin Hood, I don't think Robin Hood is worth building around with an action package. Ratigan, I'd love to say I think it's good. Probably not, but it does have action synergy. Donald Duck, whenever he's challenged, you can return an action to your hand, but uninkable. Pete being able to banish an item could be significant. We'll get to the screen of items. There's a couple of okay ones. And this Don Carnage, who has Evasive, so you might want to play him for that reason. And whenever you play an action that isn't a song, you can give an opposing character Reckless. So that's actually kind of interesting. And then like Iago here, where you can play actions cheaper. Not the most overwhelming set of action-related characters. But then to look at the actions themselves, Restoring the Heart, if you're running yellow-blue, this is like the heal, and then this is just a 1-cost draw a card. Mosquito Bite, putting 1 damage on a chosen character. When we get to looking through the characters, pay attention to how often 1 damage is very significant. I mean, even if we quickly go back to the Evasives and just take a look, the Happy, the Jiminy Cricket, the Tinkerbell, the Vanellope. So yeah, Mosquito Bite I actually think pretty good. Again, some of these cheaper actions, if you do end up pulling like a Lilo or a Shark, then you might be more incentivized to include some of these, like Wake Up Alice, return chosen damage character to their player's hand. That ain't bad, right? Like if your opponent puts out like a big guy that you cannot deal with, but you're able to put like 1 damage on it and then just bounce it back, then that's a pretty good tempo turn. Like the Fuse is obviously pretty cool. Thievery, again, not great, but if you want to run characters that have synergy with actions, then it's okay. Candy Drift, I think, is super cool. You draw a card, chosen character gets +5 strength until the end of the turn, and then they're banished at the end of the turn. This will allow for an incredible uptrade. Invited to the Ball for card draw. Hypnotic Strength, I think is fantastic. It's even seeing meta play at the moment, so this will make for a nice surprise. So be aware of Hypnotic Strength when you're playing your sealed games, but at the same time, in sealed, it's not always advisable to play around everything. Yes, you want to be aware of things, but yeah, Hypnotic Strength pretty good. Show Me More is nice card draw, and Hypnotic Deduction is dig. Hideaway is indeed in format, so you could get some value banishing a high-cost item or location. Obviously, Sail is super good. Vision of the Future, these are some super high rolls. Twin Fire, again, this will come up again when we get to damage-dealing cards. But even this uninkable card, I think you could get some huge value off and just win the game on the spot sometimes. So this would be tempting to include. Even Quick Shot, even on an uninkable 2-cost, is deal a damage, draw a card. Pull the Lever, obviously another high roll among the actions. They never come back, I think is super, super good. Wrong Lever, even if you don't pull the Lever, then this is still a non-song inkable version of Mama Knows Best, so that's pretty good. You Came Back is a super tricky card that could really catch some players off guard. Desperate Plan, obviously good for card draw. Everybody's got a weakness. I had this in my sealed event for Reign of Jafar, and it was so good. Finders Keepers, another incredible high roll. Glimmer versus Glimmer. There's not a lot of banish effects in this format, so don't be that surprised if you do see something like this. And then we've got Get Out, another card that was in my Reign of Jafar sealed deck and actually was super necessary, because most sealed players do include a couple of characters that are around that 6-7 cost threshold that are super, super tricky to remove with a sealed deck. So having some removal I do think is good. So I think this is a nice one. An Energy Blast, 1 higher, but lets you draw a card. And most everyone's mad here. I also ran this in my sealed deck and I did regret it. It came in use like maybe 1 game. Just a bit too expensive, but does have the potential of winning you the game if there's a lot of damage on a character. Seeking the Half Crown is card draw, even though it's on an uninkable. So yeah, there are a fair few interesting actions. I think the ones to really like look out for to like on the opposing side are things like Hypnotic Strength, be aware of something like that. Candy Drift for a really nice challenge. Twin Fire, everybody's got a weakness. Finders Keepers, I think Get Out 6 cost is pretty okay. And then even things like Mosquito Bite I really do think could come in handy because that 1 damage can really matter. So those are our actions. Alright, on to the slide of cards that include a Banish a Character effect. This is pretty much all of it. I don't think I left anything off the list here. Anna is obviously super good because she's flexible. You can have the opponent discard or give +2 strength or banish a damaged character, and she quests for 2. So Anna, I think, is a high roll in this format. Maurice, if you are running any items, can provide card draw. And if that item is specifically Maurice's Machine, you can banish a 2 strength character or less. Not a card I expect to see, but if your opponent does throw down a Maurice's Machine, be aware that this Maurice could come in and pop a character with 2 strength or less. Hades is an uninkable, pay 3 and exert to banish one of your characters to banish chosen character. Again, not a good card, but I'm just showing you everything that banishes, right? Scar, if this comes up, I will be the happiest person in the world. If this Scar comes out and banishes specifically a Mufasa, then I don't even know what to say. But if you do pull a Mufasa, be aware that this might happen. Hades, Fast Talker. When you play him, you do 2 damage to another one of your characters to banish a character of cost 3 or less. Again, by the time you play this Hades, then hopefully you have higher cost characters on the board. But again, something to be aware of. Philip gets rid of a dragon specifically. Pete will banish something if there's another Pete in play. And Tikar is a 10 cost character who, whenever a opposing character is exerted, you can banish them. The vast majority of these I do not expect to see. I expect Anna to be the one that sees play here. And then these actions, Get Out, I think is solid. Most everyone's mad here. I'm not sure about. Like, Energy Blast, you can maybe... Like, Energy Blast draws you the card, right? But most everyone's mad here could potentially win you the game. There's also Out of Order, which is inkable, where you can just banish a character. I think this is probably one I would play. It's probably Out of Order, then Get Out, and then for me, probably Energy Blast, then Most Everyone's Mad here. I do like this card, Most Everyone's Mad here, but I think you need synergy with the rest of your deck. But it's just important to have banish effects, and there aren't many. Like, Anna's the best one on here, and then a couple of actions, so you don't have to worry too much about banish effects. Let's look, though, at damage dealers. It will be no surprise to see the vast majority of these cards are in steel. So if your opponent reveals a steel card within the first turn or two, then expect there to be plenty of cards that can deal damage. We've got Dump Truck here, who is uninkable, but just does 1 damage on play. Like, if your opponent plays a 1-drop with only 1 willpower and you're on the draw, then this is a fantastic turn 1 for you. And even later on in the game, 1 damage can be significant. Stitch is uninkable, but it's 2 damage to any character. This is really solid. Yzma isn't great, she's uninkable, but whenever one of your characters banishes a character in a challenge, you can deal 1 damage to a character. She quests for 2, though. Again, it will depend how many uninkables you're already trying to slip in. If you've managed to get away with not including many, then this Yzma could be a solid inclusion, to be fair. Bagheera is obviously pretty great. 5-cost inkable bodyguard, 4/3 quest for 2, and when he's banished during your opponent's turn, you do 2 damage to everything. Again, I think you absolutely include this if you get it. Jafar is uninkable and 5 cost, but whenever you ink, deal 1 damage to a character. Just don't turn him sideways. Not a lot's going to be able to banish him or turn him sideways. So, might come a little late, but could still be useful. Jim Hawkins can deal 1 damage when you play him. Vincenzo is a fantastic card. He is 7 cost, but he's inkable, and immediately do 3 damage to something on a 2/8 quest for 3. Bad goal. This is a high roll, absolutely. And then the actions that deal damage, like the fuse, food fight, I think is awful, but 1 damage can be significant. Double Trouble, deal 1 damage to up to 2 chosen characters. Again, pay attention as we go through characters of how many of them only have 1 willpower. Or again, maybe that's the last damage you need, right? Twin Fire Quick Shot, Hot Potato, which is inkable, and you can either deal 2 damage to any character or banish an item. I think this is super solid. And Tug of War, it is 5 cost, but if you're struggling to deal with evasives, 3 damage to each opposing character with evasive is pretty cool, or the 1 damage to all opposing without evasive. Again, this is not a great card, but again, it's sealed format. You never know what you're going to end up seeing. Steel Chromicon is uninkable. Exert, deal 1 damage to chosen character. I don't think this is great. I think by the time you get to this point in the game, it's probably too late for this to become relevant, but you might see it, and if someone does put this down and you're both like not at that higher lore count and the game's got some legs to it, still some time to go, then maybe you will want some item removal in your deck. And 7 Dwarves Mine, one of the better locations that can also deal damage, but 2 damage if there is a knight. And then to look at the steel cards, we have this Scar that I do think, again, uninkable, but if you get away with not running a lot of uninkables in your sealed deck, you might be able to find room for this, and if you can, I think that sounds pretty good. 4/2, quest for 3, and then a built-in Teeth and Ambitions is so solid. I think this is a great card. And then a couple from Emerald, they're actually really interesting. Ed is uninkable, which is a shame. 2/3 quest for 1, and on play, you deal 2 damage to a damaged character. Not one of the better ones, but he's okay. But March Hare, I had 2 of these in my sealed deck for Reign of Jafar, and it put in so much work. Inkable, 4 cost, 3/4 is a perfectly reasonable body. 2 damage, and you just have to set up some damage, like you send a small guy into something, and then this March Hare manages to take it out. Fantastic. And then the Cheshire Cat, which is 5 cost, 4/3, quest for 2, and you do 2, and again, you do 2 damage to a chosen damaged character. I think these 2 are really solid picks to potentially include. But yeah, those are the majority of the cards that can deal damage for you Worlds players to be aware of. Let's go on now to items, starting with characters that have synergy with items. Monsieur d'Arc, whenever he quests, you can banish an item to draw a card. This Lumiere gets evasive if there's an item in the discard. Oswald, I don't expect to see a lot of Oswald, but hey, maybe you put a bunch of items in Oswald and you just go YOLO, why not? Belle is potentially a reason to play 1-cost items if you pull them. Belle's super solid, as we know. A couple of the more interesting ones I actually think are Mrs. Potts, who you can exert her, banish one of your items, draw a card. She's okay. The better one is the Wardrobe. 4-cost inkable, 3/4 quest for 1. Exert, choose and discard an item card to draw 2 cards. I think this is super solid. It's one of the best card draw engines in this format, and probably the best outside of Amethyst, I would say. So if you do pull enough like cheap inkable items, then this could be quite a reasonable draw engine. If you do end up playing a lot of items, then Scrooge could be useful to play. We've got Maurice, who we've talked about. This Gaston, where you can banish one of your items to give chosen character +2 strength. Not great. This Wasabi, where you can banish an item and its owner gains a lore, so removal for opposing items that are annoying. Awesome lore burst for yourself. And he gets evasive during your turn, so a solid card here. Tamatoa, like, again, he's a solid character, and if you do get a couple of cheap items, then maybe you're recycling for them just for them to become ink. To be honest, even if you don't end up running a lot of items, you probably play this Tamatoa anyway, just because of the stats and it's inkable. Wreck-It Ralph, however, is really good. Banishing an item or location to gain 2 lore, that can be your own or removing your opponent's. It is uninkable, but probably worth the inclusion, especially while questing for 3. And the Floodborn Bell. So not the greatest set of cards that synergize with items. Obviously in Constructed, some all-stars like Tamatoa and Scrooge McDuck. I actually think the Wardrobe is probably the best reason to want to run items, or something like a Bell, or anything that's drawing you cards, really. So let's look at the items. A couple we've discussed already, the ones that give evasive. So Pixie Dust, Emerald Coil, and Longbow. These you might want to include just because of the evasive, right? Sapphire Coil is obviously super solid. It's evasive. The -2 strength. Again, the seal tends to be just a battle of the board, right? Being able to make favorable challenges into the opponent and survive. So Sapphire Coil is absolutely going to help you do that. Steel Coil, maybe uninkable, but whenever you ink, you draw and discard. So you're getting through your deck. You're finding the better cards in that deck. I think the Steel Coil is super solid. Emerald Chromacon is a really annoying item. Whenever one of your characters is banished during your opponent's turn, you can return a character to their player's hand. This is a fantastic tempo piece, really annoying, and it's cards like this and Sapphire Coil and Steel Coil and Longbow, these evasive ones, that may make people want to run item removal. There's also Sunglasses, which are 4 cost, but it's inkable. Exert, draw a card, discard a card, drawing cards as king. Plate Armor, probably not likely to see play, being uninkable, but resist 2 into the start of your next turn is pretty good. Prince John's Mirror, I don't expect to see play, but I thought I'd include it on this slide anyway. Ruby Coil, whenever you ink, chosen character gets +2 strength. Again, that's going to help you make some nice challenges. Amethyst Chromacon is obviously card draw for both players, but card draw is king, and if you can make sure that you're able to utilize this card draw before your opponent, then this is something that could absolutely come up. And things like Ruby Chromacon, which is just exert and a character gets +1 strength this turn on a 1-drop, I think is really solid, something that could see play. Ice Spikes, where you can exert an opposing character. We know that's a strong ability. I don't think this is one of the better items overall, but it's an interesting one. Devil's Eye Diamond, where you can gain lore if one of your characters took damage this turn. Jeweled Collar, I ran in my Reign of Jafar sealed deck. I ended up regretting it. It ended up not doing a lot, but if you are running cards that have synergy with items, like Wardrobe and Belle and Tamatoa and Wreck-It Ralph, then obviously you mostly want the cheap ones like the Chromacon, the Shield of Arendelle, the Amethyst Chromacon. And this dual collar is pretty cheap and inkable, so it's something that you might include for that reason. So that is the pool, the card pool of items that I think are interesting in this format. Again, some that give evasive, some that give card draw, things like Chromacon that are good for tempo, things like Coil, the Sapphire or the Ruby Coil or the Ruby Chromacon that can help with challenges. And then a couple of interesting characters that synergize with them, but those are the items. And for those items, let's take a look at the potential item removal in the format. Fred, questing for 2 on a 3-cost inkable character, banishing an item on play is super solid. Archimedes does the same and has an extra ability. Whenever an item is banished during your turn, you can draw and discard a card. So this is actually one of the most solid item removal pieces in my opinion, including some card draw and questing for 2. You'll have to see it. We mentioned Pete earlier if you're playing an action package that can give you item removal, and Clarabelle who can banish opposing items, Wasabi as well. Billy Bones is a pretty interesting one. When he's banished, you can banish either an item or a location. Wreck-It Ralph is a fairly solid character, giving you 2 lore bursts for banishing you or your opponent's items or locations. And we have Hot Potato and Simba. So not a lot of item removal, but some, and there are some okay items. So if you pull, like, especially think like the Archimedes, the Fred, the Clarabelle, the Billy Bones, these are all reasonable options. They quest for a lot. Even this Simba, so yeah, that's the item removal. And of course this new Dual Link Maui who can banish all opposing items. Going on now to cards that include card draw in their ability, and there are actually quite a few. Some of them we've already discussed. At the library down here, I don't have a slide for locations, there aren't many, but this is obviously one of the highest rolls of cards that you could pull in sealed. This library is obviously fantastic. We've discussed these items just a moment ago. We discussed all of these actions and songs. I don't think we talked about Fantastical and Magical, and not one I expect to see play. It's uninkable, but it is a strong ability and it is synced together, so you could theoretically sing this from like maybe turn 5 or 6, and if you're drawing 3, gaining 3 lore, it's okay, right? But it's uninkable, so you might not be able to fit it in. We've talked about a lot of these actions that include card draw. Again, everybody's got a weakness I think is so good. Finders Keepers is obviously fantastic, and some other great things that include card draw and a secondary ability like giving the challenge of him from Hypnotic Strength, Candy Drift giving +5 strength to a character. A few solid options for card draw, absolutely. And then when it comes to characters, let's start with the cheapest. Diablo is Diablo. Like, I actually think it's better to not run a lot of 1-drops in sealed format, to be honest. I think it's better a lot of the time, play or draw, to just ink turn 1 and focus on playing a 2-drop. There are some exceptions, things like Diablo, Happy as well, the one with evasive. Like, some 1-drops are like, provide too much value to not run, but I wouldn't run too many. But Diablo, one of the better ones. Monsieur d'Arc, if you do have item synergy, maybe. This Mulan is one of the better ones as well. Again, draw a card, discard a card. Bernard, if you're running a lot of allies, he draws a card on play. Again, he is uninkable, but if you can fit him in. Doc, you absolutely try and fit this in if you can. This is one of the highest rolls in the evasive format. Pua draws a card and is a bodyguard. Bucky draws a card when he's banished in a challenge. And if you can trade with Bucky and have that card returned to your hand, that's super good in sealed format. Like, anything you can do to retain card advantage. Captain Hook, whenever he's challenged, you draw a card and he's a 1/4. And quest for 2, so if your opponent can answer it in 1 shot, then fine, you still at least drew 1 card. But if you can force them to have to answer it because he's just questing for a whole lot, and like maybe you get a cheeky 2 for 1, not likely, but maybe. Clarabelle draws if you've got less cards in your hand than an opponent, pretty good. Simba draws when he banishes a character in a challenge. We've discussed Bruni and Genie and Pinocchio. Yzma, she quests for 2 on a 4-cost inkable, exert, and you draw up to 3 if you had less than 3 cards in your hand. Another really solid card in this format. Kuzco is 4-cost uninkable, but quest for 2, and he's evasive, and then you get the flexibility of at the start of your turn, either both players draw or both players discard. Again, if you don't get a lot of evasive, or you don't get a lot of card draw, or you don't end up running a lot of uninkables in your sealed deck, Kuzco still could absolutely come up. Daisy Duck, if you end up getting a lot of locations and pirates, again, not a card I expect to see play. Scar is really good with Ward, and whenever you challenge, one of your characters challenges a damaged character, you can draw a card. That's really solid. This Stitch, that's a 3/4, and you gain a lore and draw a card. If he banishes a card, that's solid. Namari is fantastic, like on play, letting you draw and discard, and then every turn she's on the board, just getting through this deck, getting rid of those uninkables, those cards that we put in the deck because we had to, and getting towards the solid things that we want to be playing on our curve. Tramp's another really good one, questing for 2, 8 willpower and providing a lot of card draw. King Candy can let you dig. We mentioned Majika earlier. This Mad Hatter, whenever a damaged character challenges another character, you can draw a card. So that's you or your opponent. And questing for 2 is a 6 cost, so quite expensive. But again, I think you should run at least a couple of high cost cards in your sealed deck, particularly inkable ones. Tramp is pretty cool, obviously also providing card draw. Hades card draw is uninkable, but I think you'd be tempted to run this Hades if you can. Clarabelle is good, although if your opponent, like in sealed, unless your opponent has a good draw engine themselves, it's likely they're not keeping a lot of cards in their hand. Maybe you get a shift line and you can get advantage of this from turn 5 later on in the game. Probably less likely, but maybe you do get a lot of value from Clarabelle, who knows. And then Donald Duck, who again, super expensive, but while he's in play, your other characters get the ability to exert and draw a card. So amongst all of these, obviously there's some really solid actions, and actions in particular, there's some solid card draw there. A couple of okay songs and like what I'd call necessary items for card draw, but for the characters, I think Hades is an all-star. Things like Tramp, Mad Hat, Namari is one of the like top tier cards here. Tramp, the wardrobe, if you've got a nice item package. Stitch is an absolute must include. Yzma, obviously Pinocchio, Brunei, and Genie. And then, Doc. Quite a few of these, to be honest, I would really want to run. So there are a few card draw options, and if you pull these in sealed, likely that you're going to want to include them. So, I'm hoping that we see every player get a good amount of card draw so they can dig through the deck, reach those answers in the deck, and we can see some really good games. And a look at all the characters with the rush keyword. Which characters are going to come down and instantly be able to challenge and remove your characters? Obviously things like Elsa, who have extra uses like Evasive and exerting an opposing character. This Scar, I think, is super solid in sealed. Again, it is an uninkable, but rush and challenger 3, so it's hitting for 7 and questing for 2, and 4 willpower is not bad. Good odds that you get a 2 for 1 out of this. Monstro is obviously incredibly expensive, but he is inkable, and if you do get to A, even if you're not discarding to re-ready with a full breach, just a rush character that hits for 6, I would absolutely want to play this in sealed. Rafiki's also kind of interesting. He's an uninkable 4 cost, and only a 1/4, but on the turn you play him, he gets Challenger 4. So on his rush turn, he's a 5/4 beat stick that then quests for 2. So I think this is super reasonable to include as an early rush character that can reasonably remove a lot of things. This Mushu is kind of interesting. You can exert to give another character rush, similar to Beagle Boys, who can give rush and resist whenever he quests to another chosen character. Phantom Blot is 2 cost uninkable, but again, a rush character, potentially worthwhile, and Kakamora hits for 5. I think this is a quite reasonable rush character. Stabbington Brother, 3/4, not one of the better ones, but rush is just innately good, right? Abu, another uninkable, but it's a 4/4 questing for 2. This Goofy is a 6 cost uninkable, but the fact it's also evasive, this would absolutely be tempting to run. This Gaston is cool, but I don't know how consistently you're setting damage up on yourself to make this cheaper to play, and unless you do that, then it's probably too expensive. You could probably easily set up 1 damage character, so you're paying 7. So maybe if you're not including a lot of uninkables, you can find room for like for 1 Gaston if like it's your only uninkable maybe. Vanellope is pretty worthwhile because she has evasive and rush as well. So those are the rush characters, and of course Cogsworth can give rush to a character. Alright, we're at about the 45-minute mark, so I'll try and get through these characters as quickly as I can. Starting with 1-drops, again, like I just said not long ago, I don't think you should run many 1-drops unless they are that top tier or it's a shift line or something, but there are some pretty interesting ones. Daisy and Lady are obviously fantastic. Rhino, if you get the shift line, then of course you run this. Cogsworth Giving Rush is a pretty cool ability. Diablo draws you cards. Palace Guard, if they choose like any of those actions that deal 1 damage, is just getting rid of this, and I think players will run those sort of cards, so you could get really punished for running this Palace Guard. But if your opponent can't answer it early, then this could be a nice inclusion, likely to get a few lore. Rule Guard, I think, is fantastic. It's always going to have at least Challenger 1, so it's a 2/2, and if you get a lot of card draw in your deck overall, then you can potentially make him even bigger. Clarabelle, if you get the shift line, but even if you don't, this is item removal, and like we saw, there are a couple of items that you would definitely want to remove. Merryweather, I think, is cool because on play you can pay 1 to give a chosen character +2 strength, so I think she's one of the better ones. Basil's pretty cool because it has support. This Simba can give +2 strength to a character on play. Again, it's uninkable, but could come in handy. Captain Hook is obviously a pretty solid one. Dump Truck does 1 damage to a character. Happy has Evasive. Mulan draws you cards. So there are a few exceptions cards like 1-drops that I would want to play, but that is the pool of the most relevant 1-drops. For 2-drops, there are some that you definitely want to look out for. Ludwig von Drake is going to catch so many people off guard because by turn 2 they're not going to have necessarily revealed that they are Amber and Sapphire. But if your opponent on turn 1 inks an Amber card and plays a Sapphire card, or the other way around, and you are running actions or just non-character cards in general, be scared of this Ludwig, because if you pull this, you probably really try and run Amber Sapphire, right? But that being said, then you're not running Steel, so you might be running Steel as your 3rd colour. But if that's the case, then you're not running Ruby or Amethyst, so you probably have less evasives. Or maybe the 3rd colour is Ruby, so they have less of the cards that deal damage, which are predominantly in Steel. So there are some early reads that you can make just in the first couple of turns of the game. But yeah, this Ludwig is obviously super solid. Jim Deere is a 0/4 bodyguard on a 2-cost, pretty cool. Lilo is obviously Lilo. Diablo is an evasive answer to things. Jiminy Cricket has evasive. Madam Mim is pretty interesting with the Challenger 1. Raja, if your opponent doesn't have actions, and this is a really solid statted 2-drop. Yzma returns to your hand if she's banished and you have more cards in your hand than your opponent. Really solid. Even if it trades and then it returns to your hand and then it's just ink, that's really good. Bonsai, really, really good. There's obviously some cards that do 1 damage, but not a lot that do 2 unless you've already got damage on you. So I think more often than not, this Bonsai gets his quest and gets a trade off as well. Go Tamago, we've talked about. Gazelle gives evasive. Olivia Flavisham, she quests for 3. That's gas. Yzma helps you dig. Queen of Hearts, I think is pretty solid, especially if you get something like Hypnotic Deduction. Tinkerbell evasive. This Funbury I actually think is pretty cool. You can exert and give +3 strength to a character this turn. Vanellope is obviously the evasive. Bernard is the card draw. Tipo, hey, it's ramp, but can you afford to lose an extra card from your hand on turn 2? Maybe, it depends on what you pull overall, right? Calhoun, obviously solid. And things like Mr. Smee and Helga we've talked about as great for dealing with evasive. So some cool 2-drops. Going on to 3s, this Bolt enters play exerted, but does quest for 4, so that's scary. Lady is obviously a fantastic new card in the game. Bambi, hey, why not? If you don't run a lot of uninkables and you can afford the space of this uninkable, gaining lore just for playing it, pretty cool. Tiana, I think, is a super solid card in this format where there are less removal options for her, so Tiana's going to be a super annoying card in Sealed. Obviously things like Giant Cobra and White Rose getting you lore gain. Tinkerbell, the evasive character. Kanai, I think, is really cool. 3-cost inkable, 1/4. Quest for 1, Challenger 2, and during your turn, if he's banished in a challenge, return this card to your hand and gain 1 lore. So those cards that return to your hand when they're banished, we looked at the Yzma Cat, there was another one, and now this Kenai. These are really good in Sealed. Again, if you can make a trade and then return that card to your hand so that you can deploy it the next turn, or it just becomes ink, and this Kenai gives you +1 lore, and it's a 3/4 body essentially. Well, it's a 1/4 body, but Challenger 2 hitting for 3. So I think this is really solid. Lena, we didn't talk about earlier, but she was on the screen of damage dealers. Evasive and exert to deal 1 damage to a chosen character if you're running purple steel. This is solid. The Magic Carpet questing for 3. Anastasia is a nice option. 1 willpower. This is a card you would absolutely want to ping for 1 because she hits for 3, and when she's challenged, you have to discard a card, and you definitely want to challenge her because she's questing for 2. So this is a character you definitely would want something that does 1 damage. We've talked about things like Anna, Basil, Captain Hook. Louis, I think, is one of the best new cards from Reign of Jafar, and I certainly certainly hope he sees some play. Fred is item removal on an inkable card that quests for 2. Prince Philip, just a solid warded character that quests for 2. Li Shang can challenge ready characters. Prince John, obviously great stats, even though it's uninkable. Alice is a solid card. You probably play this if you pull it, despite it being uninkable. Tadashi Hamada is actually super annoying. It ramps you 2 when he's banished, and you absolutely want to challenge him because he's questing for 2. Jafar, Aspiring Ruler, giving 2 Challenger 2 to a character when you play him. So a smaller crab. Be aware of this Jafar 100% if your opponent's playing Steel. And Pete is indeed in this format, but again, not a ton of relevant actions, but could absolutely come up. Hey, if you pull Pete, you probably play Pete. Speeding on up onto 4 drops. Some here that we've already talked about. This Minnie Mouse, Bodyguard on a 0/8, absolutely solid, and she gets +1 strength for every damage on her. Car is uninkable. It's really good though. I had this in my sealed deck for the Reign of Jafar event that I did. A 3/3 quest for 2, and when he quests, chosen character gets -2 strength, and they gain Reckless. Again, uninkable, but really solid. Gopher is just a 1/6 that quests for 2. If you get 4 lore out of him, then great. Goofy, I think, is really solid. At the end of your turn, you can remove 1 damage from all of your characters and ready any character that you remove for damage from this way. A really solid choice. We've talked about things like Pascal and Naveen. Rhino's a high roll. Snow White. This is one of the highest rolls in sealed overall. This character can't be challenged. Not evasive, just cannot be challenged. So you need to be able to answer this Snow White. So yeah, go back to the screens where we were talking about cards that do damage or banish. They have value. If your opponent has a Snow White and you can't answer it and they're winning the race, there's every chance that just wins them the game. Sven is super solid. Ana to freeze down an opposing character. We've talked about things like Genie and Iago. Kuzco bounces items. Panic is a flinger dinger. The Queen is actually fairly solid. And this Flynn Rider as well is uninkable, but he quests for 3, and when he's challenged, if they don't discard a card, then you gain 2 lore. That is mad lore burst. Jock gaining 2 lore if you play him while you have 3 other characters on play, I think is super solid. This is definitely a card to be aware of if your opponent's on Emerald. This Jock, this uninteractive lore gain. Gizmo Duck can challenge ready characters and has resist 1. Shere Khan, if you like in Seal quite often, if you don't get a ton of card draw, or even if you do, you're just inking, you're extending, you're emptying your hand. So I think this Shere Khan is a really solid inclusion. Aladdin, if they're playing Ruby, be aware of this Aladdin from turn 4 on play. He gives +2 strength to all of your characters. That can make for a really nice challenging turn. Rush on this Kakamora is also pretty interesting. Just Rush in general is something to look out for. Things like Arthur that quest for a whole lot but do stop you drawing. Scrooge McDuck, a great body. Pluto, a really solid bodyguard. And we've talked about things like Stitch. So those are the 4 cost characters. The list gets smaller as you go. Going on to 5 costs. This Darling Deer is another one I really want people to be aware of if they're playing Amber. You play this Darling Deer and a character gets +2 lore this turn. This could absolutely win games on the spot. Elsa is obviously a fantastic high roll. We talked about things like Cheshire Cat that do damage. Majika the spell that draws a card. Sven, who has Rush and gives -3 strength. Rapunzel, I think, is one of the best cards in this format overall. Donald Duck for the ramp and great stats. Gantu would be absolutely terrifying to see at the World Championship. And then a couple of cool bodyguards like Bagheera and Lady Cluck, who's also super solid. So yeah, there's some 5 cost characters here that I would absolutely look to include, specifically like the Namari, the Gantu, the bodyguards, the Donald, the Lilo, the Rapunzel, the Cheshire Cat. I do think the Cheshire Cat is really, really good. The Elsa. Yeah, some really solid 5 drops here. Going on to the 6 drops, this Maid Marian, when you play her, you give -5 strength to a character. That's actually pretty cool. Anna can have card draw if you have an Elsa in play. Not high odds, but at least she's inkable in a 3/6 quest for 2, so that's pretty interesting. Baymax is also very cool. Be aware of this Baymax. Raya is a fantastic 6 drop. Whenever she quests, you can pay 2 and ready another character, and they can quest again. So a solid pull from Sealed. Pete is good. Mother Gothel obviously allows you to bounce a character. We talked about Shark. Kuzco is in this format, similar to Hideaway, so be careful with your items and your locations. This Jafar with no Brawl, no Sisu. This Jafar is super cool. I really hope we see this. And this Simba that can banish an item or location. And this Basil up here that can be card discard. So there are some solid 6 drops here. I think the Maid Marian is really good. I think that the Baymax, both these Basils are actually pretty cool. The Maui obviously is nice to have. It's inkable, and if your opponent is playing items or locations, then this can punish it. Gothel for the board tempo. Yeah, I think there's some pretty solid 6 drops here. And now for the 7 drops. Probably not going to include a lot of 7 drops, but if you are, there are a couple of cool ones. Again, Wendy Darling may be necessary if you don't get a lot of Evasive. Tramp does allow you to draw potentially a lot of cards and dig through the deck, so that might be worth it. Hades is solid card draw, so that might be worth it. Mufasa is Evasive and Inkable, so that might be worth it. Basil allows you to bounce a character on play, and whenever he quests, your opponent discards a card at random. This is probably worth it. Tinkerbell is really solid against just a 5/6 Evasive. That's going to be really tricky to answer. Mulan, this hero, if you can shift him, I think potentially maybe is worth it. Vincenzo is absolutely worth it. You 100% include the Vincenzo. And this Peter Pan Neverland Prankster I also think is pretty cool. Your opponent can't gain lore until they've challenged. And this Arthur is uninkable, but this ability on play, you give a character Challenger 2, Resist 2, and they can challenge ready characters this turn. That's really solid. And again, you will try and keep your uninkable count low so that you can make room for 3 or 4 of these probably fairly niche but super useful or just well-statted characters. And that is it. So some of those screens, I apologize that we raced through quicker than others, but I sincerely hope that this video, whether it helps just one Worlds player just be that bit more aware of something that's in the format, a tricky character in action, something like that, or it helps people that are planning to watch the World Championship have a bit of an overview of what the meta is going to look like. I want to make the disclaimer again, the cards I've shown today are not every single card in the format overall. If you're a Worlds player, I very much recommend do your own research. I'm sure you already have, but I hope that this was useful nonetheless. But this will be one of my last pieces of content before I leave for Worlds. I'm going to edit this and release this for Tuesday before I leave, and then tonight I'm running a podcast. I'm going to edit that, upload it, and probably set that for release on Wednesday, but I am leaving Tuesday night for the airport, so only one more piece of content that you will see on the channel before the World Championship. I just want to say one more time, thank you all so much, everybody that has supported me and the channel. I would not be where I am without you, and it really does mean the world to me. But that's going to be it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you're brand new to the channel, please subscribe for all things Lorcana. Hit that like button to show support, and we'll see you soon.